Okay. Member Crowder?
Here.
Member Nguyen?
Yes, here.
Member Reed?
Here.
Member Perham?
Here.
Member Merchant?
Here.
Member Hunter?
Here.
Member Higgy?
Here.
All right, everyone is present and we have a quorum.
Perfect. And Mr. Clerk, would you read the announcement, please?
Yes, of course. This meeting is live streamed and temporarily closed to in-person public participation. The clerk's office is in the process of hosting hybrid public meetings that will provide board members and members of the public with the option to participate in the meeting either in person or remotely. Thank you for your patience and support. To make a verbal comment at today's meeting, dial 916-875-2501 and follow the prompts. When the chair opens public comment for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter, callers will be contacted by phone and transferred into the meeting to make their public comment. Written comments are always accepted. Send your email comment to boardclerk@saccounty.net, or your comment will be routed to the board. Your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record.
Thank you. Welcome to tonight's meeting, and I thank you for coming. My name is Jim Crowder. I'm the chairperson for the Cosumnes CPAC committee. The CPAC members are volunteer citizens appointed by the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. Council shall be advisory only to county agencies. The purpose of the CPAC is to encourage citizen participation in the planning processes, provide local forums to develop and propose community goals and objects, to serve as a local sounding board for new proposals offered by county staff and to assist the county planning agencies and the Board of Supervisors in carrying out approved community plans and the county's general plan. The function of the CPAC may include updating community goals and plans, develop and propose community improvement programs, review and comment upon proposed amendments to the general plan, specific plan, zoning changes, conditional use permits, and related zoning matters. Advisory recommendations are forwarded to hearing bodies, including the zoning administrator, subdivision review committee, the county planning commission, and the board of supervisors. Our meetings are always open to the public. Courtesy notices are mailed to the property owners and occupants within 500 feet of the project based on the address, record, and posted on the county's website. So, Mr. Clerk, what's the first item on our agenda tonight?
Yes. Item 1 on the agenda is a wireless internet communication tower located at Daling Farms LLC, a 400-acre ranch property in the Cosumnes community. The request is for a use permit and design review.
Okay. And do we have any public comments?
At the moment, I do not have a public comment for item number 1.
Okay. And who's going to be presenting this item number 1?
I believe we have Nate Dobrnick.
Present, yes.
Okay, Nate.
All right. We do have a slideshow presentation. Would we begin that, please? Okay, thank you. We'll just begin with the next slide. It says the Wireless Internet Communication Tower, Project 2021-285. The location is out in the county right south of Elk Grove. That's the dividing line there at Brent Line Road. And the overall property, as mentioned, is 400 acres, which is not uncommon for this portion of the county. It's equestrian, some farming out there, and some creeks that run through the back. Next slide. Overall, it's pretty much what you would imagine. Big, wide open spaces for the horses to run, for grazing, equestrian, riding, and more farming in the back. Overall, it's extremely flat, no tall buildings or trees pretty much around there. If they are, they're scattered or set far back towards the creek side, where you have Deer Creek and the Cosumnes River. Next slide. That little pink dot represents the proposed internet tower. And all of that area toned green is that agricultural 80. That's minimum of 80 acres. And you can see that urban area to the left. And it's either going to be farming, grazing, or row crops in active use. Next slide. So the proposal tonight is for a wireless internet service tower. And this is very different from a cell phone tower. And we'll get into some of those details, and we'll drift over into the technology for a little bit, and then we're going to come back to the entitlement. I want to be sure that anyone watching is very clear that this is separate and distinct from a cell phone tower, which we're probably more familiar with. And that picture on the right is a 100-foot example. This technology is going to be using the standard space frame, no guy wires, self-supporting, real small footprint, maybe a 50 square foot pad, and then just 120-foot tower is being proposed. Next slide. So the why is because we need internet. As we're doing tonight, we're on a streaming platform, and it's considered a local, state, and federal priority to bring broadband service to all Americans, rural and urban. And the rural areas oftentimes have trouble getting that. The federal standards are pretty weak, 25 down and 3 up. If you were in the city, you wouldn't even find anything near that low level. But to get to the rural, I'll let the applicant, who I believe is here today, speak to what they can provide, which I believe far exceeds the baseline standards. Next slide, please. Earlier we saw something toned in green. In this area, everything that you see in red cannot get wireline service. That is a hard fixed connection. You can see that the city of Elk Grove is green, all that toned green area, they can get high-speed internet, the broadband, but all the red is without that. This is through the California Interactive Broadband Map. Next slide. And so what happens to get the internet out there is that it's really not going to happen to bring, the service providers just aren't going to bring those cables and wires all the way out to those far-flung ranch homes and farmsteads. But what's happening is that these things called WISPs, wireless internet service providers, on these fixed towers do point-to-point connection. So straight from the tower to the subscriber's dish on their home, barn, whatever it is, to get that broadband access, just like you would anywhere else. Next slide, please. And the importance of this, I think, is underscored over last year. We've had a lot of lessons about kids in school, sometimes in rural areas, suffering from weak internet signals. It's also the mainstay of modern farming and business, just maintaining that internet. As long as you have clean line of sight and point-to-point connection from the tower to the subscriber's dish, that internet is going to maintain. I want to be very clear that it is point-to-point. Nobody's going to walk around with a tablet or a cell phone and say, wow, I'm getting free internet. It does not work that way. It's only going to be for the subscribers because the microwaves are essentially a fixed line of information from tower and home and back again. Next slide. So the formal request is a use permit, and this will go up to the zoning administrator for that 120-foot tall wireless internet delivery tower in the Ag 80 zone on that ranch property, and it is far from all obstacles. That's one thing we didn't really see in those field photos, but there are no trees, obstruction, power lines, power towers, anything else. So this overall does seem to be a fine site for an internet service tower to deliver broadband internet for rural subscribers. Next slide. Overall, we have an oblique image, that little pink line in the center representing a scaled model of what the 120-foot proposed tower would be. See that in that wide open spaces, the large distances between homes. Again, it can reach about 3 to 5 miles. So still plenty of chance to get enough subscribers out there. And on the right, there's a diagram showcasing the proposed tower, the space frame tower. All those little green dots indicate a microwave dish that would be sending and receiving broadband internet to those rural subscribers. This does conclude the staff's presentation, and we'll open it up for questions to staff and or the applicant. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have one. This is Fred. The packet, I didn't get to go through with the slides, so I was thumbing through what I have here. I noticed on the parcel, they have one of the parcels is owned by Steve Hardesty. They have parcel, I don't remember the number, but it's one of these pictures. Is that a neighbor, or be part of this, or curious why they have that parcel on this application?
This is Nate Dobinick from Planning. I can't speak to the owners of the parcels. I did provide the the geo coordinates and the listed parcel number. This one's pretty clear that it is on the, I think you're pronounce it, the Dowling.
The picture I have has a yellow outline and a red outline that says parcel 021-000 is owned by Steve Hardesty on Dillard Road. So that's back. Are they overlapping with a parcel that's owned by the Dowlings?
Not to my knowledge. It is the project site for the wireless internet tower is completely within the Dowling Farms branch. It doesn't cross any other property line.
That's it. I don't know why. I've got a lot of pictures of horses.
Hey, Fred, I think that is a neighboring parcel where I think that map shows all the parcels that had to be notified.
Okay. Even the housing.
I'm not real clear why it's in there either, but that's so because Steve's parcels are contiguous with Justin's there and Jennifer's. That's why that's there.
I didn't have a problem with it. I was just curious why it was on the application and everything, and then why do we have all these pictures of horses and fencing?
Because they're pretty, Fred. Come on.
I'm trying to weed through this thing, and then the one with suburban houses, those lots there on the other side of Elk Grove. Why are they in that picture?
Same reason, have to be notified.
Yeah, that does represent the notification area to demonstrate that we have
500-foot area. Okay.
Correct.
That's fine. It doesn't say it on the picture. No, I have no problem with this. It looks good. Helps all the kids.
Yep.
Whatever. Saves cost to everybody concerned.
Nate, I do have one question for you. I was reading through it. They're not going to put any type of fencing around the cell net tower?
There would be a small fence. I believe that the applicant here can speak directly, and I believe it'd be a post and beam fence to keep the animals from rubbing against it. It will have a battery backup, so they need to protect, some of that ground equipment. But I think there would be some sort of equestrian appropriate fence. It's far enough from the main road to avoid, any other sort of fence, or doesn't need a chain link fence or anything like that. Just something to keep the animals away for the most part.
Okay.
We can turn that to the applicant if you would like.
Hey, Jim, can I ask another question?
Please do, Fred.
I was looking at the initial thing, and it says the tower could serve 1,000 customers, with each dish capable of serving 10 customers. Going to be 100 dishes on that tower?
Wow.
This is Nate from Planning.
Like tin cans on there or something?
I think that's a hypothetical one. Now, that would obviously be limited by the structural load, whatever they're designing it for. But I was in a conversation with Mr. Hugo, the applicant, on what the ultimate potential for these are. I was just curious into how many they could serve, and one tower can serve quite a lot of customers out there. So I think would be a huge benefit for the rural areas to get that broadband internet.
I just was curious if they would only serve 10 customers per dish. That seems small. I just don't know this business, so I was thinking they would serve a lot more than that. But to have 100 dishes on the tower would look kind of weird. So your design review committee has taken all that into account?
Yes, the utilitarian nature. It's we don't get into regulating the number of dishes, but overall, I believe that the applicant would be better aligned to speak exactly to the potential number of dishes on that proposed tower.
Yes, income from each one of them? Is
Yep.
that right?
Yep.
Is that Justin?
No, this is Jim. But yeah, they should get income from each one.
Oh, I thought you were answering that as fact. Yeah, because my question would be, I wonder at one of structure, every time you put an antenna, and I'm assuming that each round dish with the looks like a bass drum there, every time you put one of those on the tower, it increases the wind load, and if you've got that many, if you load that thing up, is it? I mean, it's obviously, I don't care if it blows down. It would be the applicant's issue to blow down. I'm just curious how many of those standardized antennas can that thing handle with 100-mile-an-hour winds if there's no guy wires?
My name is Case Hugo. I'm with California Broadband Services. I assume you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
First of all, the equipment can handle more than 10 users per sector. We intend to put on about 6 sectors, and I expect to be able to get at least 200 to 400 customers capable between those 6 sectors. The wind loading is actually done by the engineer, which is part of the package for the building permit, and the engineer does all the wind loading based on the wind expectancy in this area. Does that make sense?
Okay, so back to Fred's question: how many of those antennas? What is the maximum number of antennas are you going to put on that tower?
I expect to have about 6 sectors and probably about between 2 and 6 directional antennas for the backhaul.
You're breaking up. So how many antennas are you talking about again?
I expect not more than 12 at this point in time.
Okay,
And
what
how
are you
many,
permitted for?
No, I did not hear the question.
So what is that? What is it permitted for? Because it changes the character of the
I believe
tower.
the picture that you saw actually had more of them on there, because when we have the engineer draw it, we basically have them design it for what we expect would be the maximum, not what we actually would be putting on it at this point in time.
Understood, but what is that a finite number that you're getting a permit
absolutely.
for?
I'm sorry?
Is that a finite number that the maximum number? Is that a finite number, or is it an estimate as like you're imparting right now?
The number that we have put on the request is what we expect to be the maximum that we'll be putting on there.
And what is that number?
Nate, do you have that information still there? It's on one of the slides that you showed.
Yeah, I'm just looking for transparency here. I'm not trying to back into the
I want to say 12, but I'm not 100% sure.
Hey, Jim, can I throw something out here?
Please do, Fred.
Fred, my point isn't to get after Justin and them about this thing. The thing is if make sure there's enough so everybody gets served, and that they're not limited by like a design review, and then people will not be able to be served because they're inadequate because of design review, not from the functional use of the thing. I was just surprised by the 10 customer number on the application. If it had to be a foot bigger one way or another, 10 feet taller, who cares? That's its job. His job isn't to look cute. It's to serve these people who need the service.
Yep.
So if the county has standards that said you can only have a tower this big because of what it looks like, well, then I think we should adjust it, or at least know those parameters. we don't know what the county's parameters are for this kind of tower. I don't have limits in my imagination. That's all I got.
Nate, do you have some information for us on that?
Yes, the tower could go to 130 feet. We could get 10 foot taller than what's being proposed now. The design review committee did look at this and in general had minimal comments. They did also ask about the fence at the base, but overall there were no design review comments that would seek to limit the number of dish antennas up there. I think as Mr. Hugo implied, that's based on the structural load of whatever over-engineering they wish to design it to. But there were no design considerations to limit that.
Right. Yeah,
I've got a
I
question.
would echo Fred here in just making sure that if Justin and Jennifer are going through all these motions here, that every time they add an antenna and increase the amount of income from that antenna, that should be translated to dollars to Justin and Jennifer too.
I do have a question for Mr. Hugo. Fred's hitting on a good point. So how many prospective customers will they service when the antenna gets erected?
We pretty much we could probably cover about 5 miles in around the tower comfortably. We have gotten quite a few requests north of the tower location, between the tower location and Wilton Road, because over there the internet is not the greatest. But obviously, until we start providing these services, it's hard to tell how many people are going to sign up.
You haven't done any estimates on whether it's going to be 500 customers or 1,000?
I
expect it to be under 500.
Okay.
Hey, what does it cost?
I'm
want
sorry?
to sign up for it? What does it cost if you want to sign up for it?
Our base rate starts off at $49, and we go up. Our most popular packages are around $129.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any more questions? Anyone? John, you've been pretty quiet.
No, I'm good. I thought right from the beginning it was a pretty nifty idea to bring broadband out to some of these more remote areas.
Yep. Well, if we don't have any more questions, do I have someone that wants to give a motion?
I'll motion to approve it.
Okay, that was Fred. And have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it, Jim. John.
Okay.
Hey, Jim Parham, should we put something on there that would allow them to not have to go through this again if they needed 20 feet on it or something like that? Without going through the whole
Yeah, I
deal?
think that would be appropriate, Fred.
You want to amend the motion then? Add it in there?
Yeah, add it in there that if future rural demand requires it, that they be allowed to fulfill that demand in some kind of moderate way. I don't know how to phrase that. Jim's probably better than I am at that. But I don't see any area growing a lot of houses, but there's still, farm workers and stuff across the river. I don't know. They should have some latitude there, and I just don't know how to word it. Or they may not desire it. I don't know, but still approve it like it is.
Is the applicant still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you see a need for, you've looked at everything. Do we need to add something else in? Is there a way that you'd like us to word it so that it gives you some leeway?
No, we're pretty happy with a 120-foot tower.
Okay, wish you guys luck.
All right, Mr. Clerk, would you like to take a vote now?
Yes. So I have a first from Member Higgy and a second by Member Merchant. I'm going to take the vote. So let's start with Member Chair Crowder.
Yes.
Member Nguyen.
Yes.
Member Reed.
Yes.
Member Purim.
Aye.
Hi, Member Purim, I apologize. I didn't catch that.
That is an aye.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. Member Merchant.
Yes.
Member Hunter.
Yes.
And then Member Higgy.
Yes.
All right. The motion passes with 7 yeses. No contest. Unanimous vote.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Clerk, what's our second item on the agenda? And Mr. Clerk, you want to
Yes.
read what's this? Okay,
Moving on to item 2. Sorry about that, Chair Crowder.
that's okay.
Okay, item 2 is Coyote Creek Agrivoltaic Ranch. This one does not require a vote. This looks like it's an initial review of the project. It's located at multiple parcels, totaling approximately 2,555 acres, along Scott Road, extending from about 7,000 feet south of the White Rock Road, Scott Road intersection, southwards to about 900 feet south of the Boys Ranch Road, Scott Road intersection in the Cosumnes community. The request is for a use permit, special development permit, and a design review.
And Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comments?
We do have one public comment that was sent via email, but we also did send this out to members who do not have email, and I just wanted to identify, did everybody receive this public comment, or did you need me to read it into the record?
Would you
I
please
received it.
Would you read into the record anyway, just to make sure?
Okay, I can do that. All right, so we have a public comment from Van Vleck Ranch. This is an email sent January 31st, 2022 to the Cosumnes CPAC, to Nate Dobrnick and the County Board Clerk. The subject line reads Cosumnes CPAC meeting agenda item number 2, PLP 2021-00191 Coyote Creek Agrivoltaic support. Dear CPAC members and Assistant Planner Nate Dobrnick, I am writing to express my family's support to respectfully ask for your support for the Coyote Creek Agrivoltaic project, which is located on the Barton Ranch, which is owned by the Garms-Mosier family. This project is located next door to one of our main ranching operations. We own the 480 acres directly to the south, and we leased almost 4,000 additional acres surrounding this area. These projects will bring in important, predictable long-term income from these ranching families, which has become extremely difficult to because livestock revenue are low and reduced feed for livestock because of droughts. This will help them keep their agricultural operation viable, which keeps their land open and available for wildlife. Also, our family will be providing the wildlife/habitat mitigation for these projects. The use of our mitigation for these projects will complete the conservation strategy that the SSHCP, County, California Fish and Wildlife Agency, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have been part of and will preserve forever almost 4,000 acres on our ranch in eastern Sacramento County. This preserve is highly strategic because it lies between Deer Creek Hills and Gill Ranch, which creates a preserved wildlife corridor that is one of the largest in the region. I respectfully ask for your support of these projects. Please let me know if you have any questions. Sincerely, Stan Van Vlick, President of Van Vlick Ranch.
Thank you. So who would like to start?
On the letter or on the,
Jim, it's John. Is there a presentation, or are we we going right into it?
Nate, is Nate going to be the one presenting?
Yes, I am prepared to present. If the clerk would
Okay,
like to
please.
start the slideshow, we can do that, or we can have questions first, whatever is the purview
No,
of the
let's go
council.
ahead and do the slideshow, please.
Understood. Kitty, yes, here we are. All right, thank you,
There's a
Ms. Council members.
communication packet here.
I spoke over you. Could you repeat, please?
Is there a packet that you can follow along with here without, we don't have the I'm on a cell phone?
Yes, I would be referring to the staff's slideshow presentation. You should have been delivered, as I understand it, a printout of the slideshow.
I got a mountain of paper here with you. I just need a minute to see if I can find the.
Yes, it would have the Sacramento County wave logo, and then in large size type, the Coyote Creek Agrivoltaic Ranch with the planning environmental review.
You guys can go ahead and get started. I'll find it. And if I got an inch of paperwork to go through, so you go ahead and start. They didn't separate it out from the rest of the paperwork.
Understood.
So,
okay, we'll begin. Next slide, please. I think we skipped one. Can we go back?
Still there?
Yes. Okay. I want to emphasize that this is an informational meeting, and I also want to call out attention to one other item. I'll bookend this and mention it again at the end of the presentation, that next week, Wednesday, February 9th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m., the Environmental Impact Report Scoping meeting will be available for all public participants. The easiest way is to email myself or anyone, SAC plan, communicate with us, and we'll get you on the mailing list for all interested parties should they wish to be involved in the EIR scoping meeting. And that's going to be an informal presentation. The design isn't yet fixed. We'll be seeking community feedback regarding the content and scope of the CEQA document, the Environmental Impact Report. Again, that's going to be next Wednesday, February 9th at 5:30, a week from today. Next slide, please. Right, so the overall location, as mentioned by the clerk, is 2,555 acres, almost 4 square miles, roughly bisected by Scott Road. As mentioned in the letter of support, it is within the South Sacramento Habitat Conservation Area and entirely within the Cosumnes community area. The northern portion is just below Prairie City off the vehicle park. You can see the little disturbed areas in the inset image to the right. And the overall land, even though it's described as undeveloped, that shouldn't mean that it's idle. It has been used as seasonal grazing land for tens of decades for cattle and sheep. And it does cross numerous creeks, Cosumnes, Coyote, Slate, and several unnamed tributaries as well. That red line indicates the overall property boundaries, and as we'll see, the overall project is a subset of that. Next slide. I want to mention one other thing as well. Up in the upper right corner, you'll see that where it says to make a live comment, call 916-875-2501. That number is 916-875-2501. For any member of the public who wishes to call in during this presentation, the clerks will take those calls and you can make a public comment as well. So that's a live feature that we have available, and that's going to be on the top of every slide. So for the community context, the overall area is that Ag 80. With a flood combining, and there's a couple areas over to the western portion which are in either light industrial or touch on the aerojet. But for the majority of the site, we're really looking at Ag 80. The entire area is used for seasonal pasturage. We have that, again, Prairie City to the north. There are some possibilities for mining around the area, but nothing active, is my understanding at this time. Next slide. Within the site history, there's only one development that within the property boundaries there, and that will remain as is. That's a farmstead. Then the overall permitting history is fairly modest for almost 4 square miles of county land. We have a cell phone tower and a few quarry permits that really never came to fruition. And then Barton Ranch, which had a Quarry General Plan Amendment, rezone, and whatnot for the 15 parcels at the bottom. None of those, to my understanding, were effectuated, and thus the land still remains as a grazing area. Next slide. The entitlement itself is a use permit to allow approximately 200 megawatt photovoltaic solar energy generating facility. This is all going to be ground mounted solar, and the special development permit would allow some deviations from baseline standards, such as 0-foot setbacks from internal property boundaries, and then that the access roads on the internal site that go from cluster to cluster of the solar fields would be dirt rather than paved, and then some alternate landscape buffering, and we'll get into that in some future slides, and then design review to determine that it does comply with the countywide design guidelines. Next slide, please. So the overall solar arrays are going to be tracking with the sun. As the sun passes over, they'll rotate to maximize that solar capture. That's what's called a single axis tracking, so they won't pivot side to side, but merely rotate around that axis to follow the sun. Next slide. There's going to be a site plan in a moment, and I want to get into some of the terminology. Some of this might be unfamiliar. I know that there's been the Slough House Solar, but some of this, for those reading, the solar array is essentially just a collection of those large panels. Then you have the switchyard, substation, and gen tie. Those are all components that capture that electricity and process it essentially for distribution within the larger electrical grid. The project does include a battery energy storage system, also called a BESS. Sometimes you'll hear that. And that's big racks of lithium-ion batteries. And I believe this one's capable of holding about 4 megawatts. And then the last term, Agrivoltaic, is going to be a new term to a lot of folks. That is essentially combining the solar panel while maintaining active agricultural use for the seasonal grazing of cattle and sheep. Next slide. This is the overall site plan, where you can see outlined in black is the overall project boundary, and then the thinner lines in between there are the actual clusters of the solar panels. So you can see there's a lot of avoided areas, mainly due to those creeks, which thread and wind their way through. In this particular slide, those faint orange lines represent those access roads, and that's the one that the special development permit is requesting be left as dirt roads rather than paved. If we look to the upper northwest corner, there's a couple of small colored blocks, the green being the substation, the little blue with the darker blue pixels are the battery energy storage units, and then that magenta line that leads out to the west, that would be the Gentie corridor, which is going to, all that solar power would be provided through that Gentie line and then tie in to the grid located on the west side where the switchyard is. Next slide. This represents a view of the landscape plan. As mentioned in the beginning, Scott Road bisects the majority of the site. It winds its way through. This aerial diagram, the blue lines represent the solar panel arrays. The gray lines here represent the dirt roads, and then those green curved forms represent the landscaping that would be planted, being for an oak thicket. We'll do the next slide. This is another example of, you can see the complexity of the arrangement of the panels, as well as how the landscape thickets, that again, these are going to be like a hedgerow of oak trees, would be designed to provide various visual shielding of the project for travelers along Scott Road. Next slide. The close-up in at the tail end as we approach the Boys Ranch Road, again, more of the same. We'll see an illustration of this as we go forward. Next slide. Overall, the thickets would be planted in a linear fashion in a row, and they're going to be seedlings, I mean, straight from Acorn, so that they're going to be native to the soil. And they're not going to be putting in 5-gallon or other pots to put them in directly so that they grow native as the existing oak trees out there do. Next slide. This illustration represents the concept when the trees achieve moderate maturity. Oak trees do grow slow, so the idea is that once they're established, though, and if they survive, there's a good chance that they could continue and combined form this thicket. And that's the illustration you see on the right, which provides some of that visual shielding from the solar panel arrays. Next slide. Alternate views of the thicket and the screening with other landscaping. Next slide. Next will be a series of illustrations demonstrating with the before and after. And the before will be selected viewpoints, that KOP stands for key observation points. And then the following slide would be a computer illustration representing what the solar panels are proposed to look like based on the current design. So this first image here is taken from the Prairie City Off-Road Vehicle Park. Next slide. And if you notice, there was a slight change in the upper portion towards the horizon, and that darker gray areas represent the solar panels coming in. Well, that'll be a bit clearer in some of the following images. Next slide. This is from vantage point 5, and next slide. Now to the left, you'll see the solar panels, and in front of that, the hedgerow designer oak thicket. Next slide. Vantage point 6, next slide. This would be an access road. I believe this one is off of Boys Ranch Road. The proposed fence, the perimeter fence there in front, with the solar panels in the rear, and an established oak thicket to the left for this illustration. Next slide. This would be a picture from Carson Creek Bridge for viewpoint 11. Next. And right on the ridgeline there to the left is the proposed solar field and some of the oak thicket. Next slide. Again, viewpoint 15, that is being Scott Road. Next slide. Here, another access road that would eventually be gated, and then the solar panels to the right with that oak thicket really going along the length of Scott Road in this particular illustration. Next slide. Overall, the key points, I think some of the takeaways, that there would be a maximum of 9 foot tall. Eventually, those oak thickets could achieve a height higher than that along that Scott Road landscaping. This is in full environmental impact report for the CEQA analysis. And as a reminder, this is just the initial review. No vote is requested. Planning staff will return to the CPAC after the draft EIR is released. It is worth noting too that we have staff from the environmental assessment team available tonight as well for questions, in addition to current planning, which is focusing more on the entitlement aspect. Next slide. This represents the overall project site. Again, that area bounded in black is all the parcels affected, and then within there, in a smaller black line, represent the solar panel arrays with the road network. That's Scott Road coming through the area with the various access point or entrance gates, barely distinguishable. There are the little plus signs, and then the electrical connections to the switchyard, Gentai substation in the upper northwest corner. Staff would like to open it up to questions at this point, but we also have the applicant's presentation, so I'll leave it to the council's purview if they wish to go with the questions or onto the applicant's presentation at this time. And again, we do have that live comment call, 916-875-2501. And one last point, the EIR scoping meeting will be next Wednesday, February 9th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. Contact any of the planning staff and we'll get you on the mailing list should you desire. Thank you.
I think we saw the applicant's presentation now.
Hello, Chairperson Crowder. This is Manuel with the clerk's office.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, just wanted to inform you that we do have a public comment on this item that just called in. So I do have staff. They have the caller on the line if you were looking to have the public comment made.
Okay, please.
Okay, can you please transfer the caller?
Chairperson Crowder, this is Alma. The caller, I told him I would call him back. So if you give me a few minutes, I'll get him on the line.
Okay.
Thank you.
How long is the applicant's presentation, just out of curiosity?
This is Nate from planning. I believe it to be 7 to 10 slides.
Okay. Do you think we have time to get that done before we answer the question?
Jim, it's John. Yeah, why don't you do that? I mean, in interest of just keeping moving here.
Yep, I agree.
I'm sorry, Chairperson Crowder, what was that request?
Well, never mind if you got him on the phone.
Yeah.
I just as soon listen to that first.
Okay. Can you hear the public commenter, Chairperson Crowder? He'd like to hear the applicant's presentation first.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. I'll call him back and get him on the line if when it's time.
Okay.
Thank you. Is Mr. Gillum on the line?
He is. Can someone unmute him, please?
Okay, there we go.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Jim Gillum from Gillum Consulting, here on behalf of the project, Coyote Creek Agrivoltaic Ranch. Brief presentation that it's similar to the project that we brought before you, Slough House Solar, back in September, but this is modified to be specific to this property. Some of the principles are very much the same, though. If we could move to the next slide, please. Nate did a great job of talking about the project, and we will piggyback on that and try not to be too repetitive. The location of the project, which most of you are very familiar with, is just south of the OHV Park, south on Scott Road, where it makes a 90-degree turn east and then heads south down towards Rancho Marietta. The Boys Ranch Road driveway access road is just before the south end of the project, and the blue line across the top there is how we connect into the SMUD grid. One of the really important things about this site is the 230 kilovolt lines that run across the OHV park and provide us good access to deliver this power into the SMUD grid. Let's move to the next slide, please. This is that Gentai, as we call it, that I was talking about. In the frame here, you can the green lines in the left top corner represent a PG&E and a SMUD transmission line. We are subject to a SMUD power purchase agreement, and that's where we'll deliver the electricity into the SMUD grid. There is an on-site substation, but the green box on the left side of the page is a switch yard that we will construct and dedicate to SMUD. Next slide, please. So the Coyote Creek Agrivoltaic Ranch is a 1,100-acre project, but as you saw, there is a lot of space within the fence line that is still open. We will be utilizing sheep to graze within the fence line. The cattle grazing will continue to take place outside the fence line. Cattle and electrical facilities are a little bit incompatible in that they tend to break things when they bump into them. So we'll limit that to just the sheep, and those will take place on a seasonal basis, help with not only the farming aspect of the property sustained. This was originally this ranch did include sheep grazing historically, and so we're bringing it back in the project, and it also helps with weed control. And to that point, D.E. Shaw does believe that utilizing animals to graze the the fire fuel down is not only a good practice from the fact that it has some agricultural value to it, but it's also better than using mechanical implements that do put out carbon, as well as not utilizing weed killer and those sorts of things that are not as good for the environment. So it does tie into their whole outlook on renewable energy and good environmental practices. The project is 200 megawatts of alternating current, which will go into the grid when the project is active, and also charge up the 100 megawatt battery storage system that has a capacity of 4 hours at 100 megawatts or 400 megawatt hours. That is the BESS that Nate talked about earlier. And so that will allow the project to continue delivering to the grid after the sun stops generating power for the day. The construction is located along Scott Road, and those hedgerows that Nate was talking about earlier are strategically located to break up the view shed. It doesn't completely hide the project, and that is something that we consulted with the county about, with the strategy and the landscape department in the design review. We have not had our design review yet, but that's forthcoming. And to the Acorn planting plan, I just want to touch on that briefly. We plan to plant far more acorns than we need to have come to fruition, because we do expect there to be some attrition. Currently, we're in the process of growing some test plots on site so that we can see what the fallout rate is, capture that data, and refine our approach so that we ensure successful landscaping on the project. The construction window for the project will take just over a year to a year and a half. It'll employ 300 people during that period, and during operation, it will be much more lightly worked, because the projects pretty much run themselves with maintenance crews of 3 to 5 people. This property does not have any prime farmland. It's all grazing land, and that's one of the reasons why we felt it was a good site. Next slide, please. So just, this is one that will go real fast past, because you've already seen the photo simulations, but the slide on the right does have not only the solar panels, but also how the hedgerows do break up the view of it. Again, not hiding it completely, but breaking it up. Next slide, please. So the project will provide significant economic benefit to the region. This project will put SMUD power within the SMUD district, creates construction and operational jobs, and it will increase the governmental tax revenues, and it helps SMUD keep their promise to procure clean energy and spend that money locally. It creates 300 jobs during the construction, as I mentioned earlier. It does put a long-term use on the property that will protect it from development and urban sprawl, preserves the existing agricultural uses on the property, and expands the grazing opportunities back to sheep. It generates clean energy with zero emissions, helps SMUD meet its renewable portfolio standard mandate, which they're not subject to the state's renewable portfolio standard mandate. They've set their own for themselves. It does help the county meet its climate action plan, because in their action plan, they count on a shift from natural gas and other less clean energy sources to renewable sources. It will reinforce grid resiliency, bringing this electricity online within the grid, and create low-cost, reliable energy. Next slide, please. Nate really went through the technology. I don't really have much to add on that, so we'll jump to the next slide. And just before I open up to questions, just leave you with the equivalence that this that you could view as this project providing. So instead of the CO2 that would be generated from 42 million gallons of gasoline being consumed, the power created from the project would do that. 411 million pounds of coal, 44,800 homes. You can read down the list all the way down for that. It does avoid the release of carbon that would be sequestered, greenhouse gas emissions, and it would create a power source equivalent to 11,820 homes. I appreciate the opportunity to provide this presentation and open to any questions you may have.
Jim, it's John. I have a bunch.
Okay.
Oh,
sorry, you and Jim, the chair. My apologies.
Jim, the chair. Yeah. Well, both of you. Somebody's going to have to answer them anyway, I guess. I see that Chris and Jessica are on here with us. I have a couple of times now asked that there be either something written into the EIR or a condition of approval that outlines specifically an access to the right-of-way along the project, so that 150 years from now, when we improve the Scott Road, we would physically either have ownership or an easement or whatever was required to do that, to provide not only 12-foot lanes, but 3-foot shoulders on each side. And I would really like it if DOT would look at it as you get up towards the Mosier Ranch House. That section of the road is particularly difficult. It's particularly narrow, and especially if you're coming from the north to the south, before you get to the ranch house, you go up a raise in elevation and into a blind curve. I want to make sure that we get enough right of way that when we do ever do something with the road, that we have enough room on both sides to do it. I'm a little concerned that the panels come out so close to the road. So I want to make sure that that gets taken care of. The other thing I'm trying to piece together as a point of relevance when I look at where all of the entrances are, is there a east and west entrance kind of together somewhere near the ranch house as what's driven on the map? I see those that go both to the east and west, but I can't really identify exactly where that is. So another question I have is specifically for those two entrances and for others as well. Are they contemplating that they're actually, when they're following a vehicle that would be coming north or south to do maintenance, are they contemplating that maintenance vehicle is going to put its blinker on and stop or immediately turn into one of these entrances? Because I'm not sure that's a good idea. Everybody that's on this council is pretty well aware of what happens on that road, how people drive on it, what the constraints of the road are. I want to make really sure that the entrance to these things is designed safely so that we don't have somebody coming up behind these vehicles, even at the 55-mile-an-hour speed, jamming on their brakes as they're looking for the first time in history at somebody who has put a blinker on Scott Road. So that's another one of the questions that I have. The other one I think relates specifically to to the landscaping and with these oak trees that they're going to plant, and I was just wondering, in the first couple of years, where the water is going to come from to irrigate these trees, because I'm not sure of the level of success that you're going to have if these don't have some type of irrigation in the first couple of years. So we can start there. I'm sorry that's a long list, but I think they're all important questions.
Mr. Chair, would you mind if I take a crack at some of this?
Please.
All right. Okay, so we'll start with the landscaping. Yes, as an establishment, period is definitely something that requires water, and we plan to use agricultural wells property to do that watering. The good news is the demand for water can be spread out over time. You don't have to irrigate everything all at once, so it doesn't require a lot of coincident volume, if you will. So that's something that we've looked at and feel is feasible. As it relates to the entrances, could you please go back to clerk? Could you please go back to the slide in the county's presentation that they conclude? I think the one that they concluded with that showed the overall project. Yeah, that one. Okay. Looking at this slide, it's a little bit tough to see, but there's the word Scott Road written on the roadway as it comes down and enters into the array of panels, just about where you see the first panels on the east side of the road. There's the 2+ symbols. That is the first entrance on this alignment of Scott. There's one up at the north end, and that does have one on each side of the road. The farmhouse is further to the south, where you see the third set of dots, or third dot down. You see that, where the panels kind of bump out around?
You mean third dot down from the top?
Third dot down from, yes. So you've got the double dots, you've got one more, and then a third one right there at the ranch house.
Right. Yeah, I see those. Right.
Okay. So that's you were asking about relative distance. That's the separation from the driveways, but there is one at the existing ranch house as well. And so from a DOT perspective, let's jump into that. If you have further questions on that, we can delve into it. They have asked us for right of way. We're going to work through that with them, and it will be dedicated right of way to the county of Sacramento. So from a legal standpoint, that's about as good as it gets from being able to have the public utilize a roadway. And they will look at our plans to ensure that our driveways meet appropriate site distance criteria. But you will have people turning into driveways, however infrequently it is, which is really not any different than somebody going to their ranch house or jumping into Boys Ranch Road or the one just to south of it. It's not a very frequent trip. There are not a lot of people coming to maintain these things. And during construction, we'll be required to have traffic control to ensure the safety of the roadway as we're doing that. But I don't know, other than designing it appropriately so vehicles can safely enter and exit the road, that we're going to be able to do something about somebody driving down that road unsafely. That's, and I don't think it's a reasonable ask to say that we should not build a project because of unsafe drivers. So
nobody's asking you not to build it. They're just beginning to ask you to start to build it correctly.
Okay.
You can't build this. I'm telling you, this is February is my 36th year of a love association with this road, okay?
Yeah.
And I have seen everything there is to see on it. And it has problems. It has huge problems. And going back just for a second to the right of way, I want to understand when this thing is written so that it generates conditions of approval that we don't get a right of way on the existing road with 2 deep culverts on both sides of it. I want a right of way that perhaps can straighten some of the visibility issues. And I want a right of way that will take this thing to 2050 federal standards. And I want a place that if you have a flat tire somewhere along your solar fields, that there's a place to get off the road and fix it. So if you close it in with solar panels and that doesn't happen and that condition of approval's not in there, and that may not be your responsibility, it may be the responsibility of the county, I want to make sure it's in there when we're done.
Certainly a fair statement. I was simply talking about the concern that somebody slowing down at a reasonable rate turn into a driveway and getting rear-ended. Yeah, that was more my reaction, was that I want to be clear that you don't want to put something where there's not adequate sight distance for a safe entrance. We don't want that either. Looking more at the most northerly entrance where you do have adequate sight distance, somebody turning in there, I guess my point is I don't think it's appropriate to not have an entrance where there's adequate sight distance because people aren't going to slow down and not rear end somebody on the road. So probably an inappropriate comment on my part. I apologize.
My other and last comment for the beginning of this is just, is there any concern during the construction phase over the weight of the vehicles that are going to be passing down the road? You should drive it right now. You'll get a good idea of the general condition of the road. So I'm just wondering, is there any anticipated negative effect of this transportation going back and forth with these 80,000-pound water trucks that would lead to some potential mitigation at the end of the construction period?
That's something we'll have to work through with the Department of Transportation. I understand the concern, and something we're willing to talk with the Department of Transportation about. Well, one thing that I will say is we are looking at getting water right adjacent to the site and could potentially keep those trips off the road, but we will have to look at that. I can't make any affirmative statements about that at this time.
Okay, thanks very much.
Certainly.
Hey, John, can I address that a second? It's Fred.
You have to ask Jim. He runs this thing.
Yes, go for it.
Isn't an encroachment permit required for any driveway coming off a county road? So they would meet the requirements that it would take for that, so much clear vision in each direction and forth, and if that's met. But the other question I have is, it's considered a wild and scenic road, and is there any adjustments to the road a problem by the county? It's one of a number of scenic roads in the county, and if that has parameters with it or not. That's my initial statement, but I was hoping to clarify the road. As far as the weight, we can have, as far as I know, we can have gravel trucks. I'm not speaking for Herb and them, just general knowledge. If I need to gravel my driveway, I can get a gravel truck down here. If I'm pouring a driveway on a concrete, and those are, heavy trucks, 55, 60,000 pounds. And the bridges will support them. The surfaces may not, but I know they're also clear for the cattle trucks to go down Scout Road, and I'm sure their weight is a lot more than a water truck. I'll let you keep going. I haven't come up with all my that's yet, but thank you. Jeez. Everybody down.
Chair, this is Jessica Brandt.
Yes,
Can
Jessica.
I add in just a couple of items for you guys?
Please do.
Yeah, so related to the right-of-way along Scott Road, right now the Department of Transportation is requesting an 84-foot wide right-of-way. It doesn't deviate, which I think maybe Member Merchant was sort of getting to, asking for more in order to perhaps straighten out some portions of the road. Is that accurate? Maybe.
I hear that right? 84 feet wide road.
Yeah, so it's 84 feet. That's the request. I think the applicant mentioned that they're still in discussions. And that
What is
would
it right
be,
now?
what is it right now? Oh, that's a good question. I actually don't know.
20 feet.
Portion.
Paved
Yeah,
wide,
the roadway
more than
itself
that.
is the roadway itself is not quite as wide as the right of way.
Right, yeah.
There are portions of this right of way that were dedicated at 60 feet with some prior mapping. So, but I don't know exactly what alignment. I should say what areas the right of way was dedicated with the maps and not. But that was what was requested. Oh gosh, I can't recall quite when that map was done. I want to say it was 10 years ago or more, but anyway, there was that was the right of way that was requested, and I think 84 feet as a general width through here seems like quite a bit, but we're in discussions with DOT about that.
Does 84 feet meet the DOT standards for 2050?
That's their standard for a standard collector roadway, which I think this is assigned. I'm not sure if that's towards the 2050 assignment or not. Nate, are you aware?
This is Nate from planning. For the general plan circulation map just indicates a post 2030. The applicant's proposed 60. DOT is requesting the 84, which to your point does meet the standards for the road of this type, 84-foot minimum. I don't know if that's 2050 though.
So I did want to clarify, I got a text message from our civil engineer with Baker Williams that the dedication of right-of-way through Barton Ranch with the mapping was 60 feet throughout the ranch on Scott Road, and that the entrance aprons and tapers to the project are proposed to be paved to improve safety and stability as we have people entering and exiting the roadway.
Yeah, I was going to add in that one of the Department of Transportation recommended conditions, was that prior to issuance of building permit for these arrays, all of the intersection areas, the project entrances, would need to be constructed to a Class C. And I apologize, I don't know what a Class C is, but we can certainly look that up. But it is something where there's, as Jim was saying, there's an apron, there's a slowdown area, and clear view. Hopefully that helps in that regard. And then as far as the adjusting the roadway and the potential issue because it's a scenic roadway, that would be something that is looked at through the CEQA process.
Jim, it's John. Can I make a comment?
Please do.
And this is for Jessica, because I know that she's really familiar with the conversion of a lot of the rural roadways that are connected to the major developments down towards Sunrise and Jackson. what I would appreciate, and I think our community at this point, after all these years, would expect, would be being designed to the same standards as all of those rural roads that are being converted as a result of all of that Western development. And I know we fall on the other side of Grant Line and we drop out of the urban services boundary, but just about every other rural road on the east side of the county is being converted as a result of that massive development. And that leaves us with the Stonehouse Road and the Scott Road. And at least at this point, I would hope that it would be given the same consideration that all of those other roads are going to be given. So I really would like that. I'd really like to understand that as we move forward with this. And, I'm kind of hoping that we don't see this again for the first time in a draft EIR. But this is the one shot at guaranteeing that at some point we can do improvements on the road that we're ever going to get. So I'd really like to make sure they get done correctly.
That's a good point, John.
And Member Merchant, could you explain a little more on getting what your view of is as a correct of improvement along Scott, other than the offer of dedication and obtaining the right of way as part of this project?
Yeah, I'm going to leave it to the DOT guys to determine. There's been a lot of reference to the 2050 federal standard. And I want to be sure that, that there is enough property, added to the existing roadway to guarantee that there is enough right of way there to accomplish that at the point we get the money behind the project to finally do some major improvements on Scott Road. That's my main concern. I'm not asking anybody to go out and build anything. I just want to make sure that we understand what the standard we're going to build it to will be when we do build it, and that the right of way is placed in the middle of this project to guarantee that we can do that without going through all of the problems that we've gone through before. And the other thing that I didn't even bring up, it's been understood for years and years, is this fantasy of a scenic road, which started to disappear when we dug the two, or when we gave away the 2 holes in the ground up at the other end of the property. But I think that it does deserve some consideration. If it's going to remain a scenic road, then it ought to be treated as such.
That all helps. Thank you.
Jim, you've been pretty quiet. What do you have to say?
Are you talking to me, Jim?
Yeah, Jim. Sorry, there's more than one Jim on the line.
Having trouble with the finding the right buttons to push. Well, first thing that's in front of my mind is commenting on what John had just said. Would have if you want a scenic road, it's pretty hard to attain that with solar panels. Dare I say, view shed, and having 2 hard rock mines next door. I would tend to agree with him. Scenic road thing sounds like a good idea, but in practicality, the way the resources are placed out here in the East County, It's not necessarily practical. Roadway, right-of-ways, and things like that. That's all something that goes through DOT and the county. I would expect them to be watching that. In general, I like the project. My only issue is the technology aspect of it. So you've got, what'd you say, 40,000 kilowatts out there, and you've only got storage for 4 hours. So I'm not sure the technology has caught up with the oh shit, a brain failure here. That our technology hasn't caught up with our dreams yet, but having the ability to put it out there in the future. Over.
The other, Jim Gillen, you're still on, correct?
Yes, I am.
So that is a good point. What about, do they have ideas or any plans for expanding the storage capacity?
That is not something I know the answer to. Hopefully I can get a text from one of the people on the line with us. I did misspeak earlier, or I should say the presentation had a legacy from another project. The number of homes that this would power, average home would be about 40,000. The megawatts on the storage is 400 megawatts.
Okay.
And so the project will produce 100 megawatts AC. And what that will do is go into the grid, but the excess power will go into the batteries. And then for 4 hours at peak distribution, the batteries would power the same amount as the project for 4 hours. So, that's not the whole time that the area is dark, but it is a significant additional amount that will go out into the grid from here. And there are offline, or I should say, non-solar tied battery storage projects that are in the works as well. Not any one of these components is going to change the ability for SMUD to deliver all their power from solar. It's going to take a lot of projects. This is one part of that whole picture. But it is 400 megawatts is a significant amount of storage. Clark, you're on the line here. Could you text and let me know if there are any additional plans for additional storage? I tend to think that if we haven't shown it on our site plan, we probably don't have the right to build it without a subsequent approval. But there is space for it, just west of where it is. I apologize for not having that detail.
That's okay.
One other question that I have is, SMUD has, I don't know what the dates are, but a particular date where they say they want to be both green energy, I suppose, by a certain date. What, with the projections, what is their use? What is their need, and how much of that need does this facility provide at that deadline of no fossil fuel energies?
So I'd have to defer to SMUD on those questions, but I do believe that their plan is to be carbon free by 2030.
Yeah, you're right, Jim.
Yeah, but I don't know the details on what their service requirement is for that. I know they get a lot of power out of the solar in the Imperial Valley. D.E. Shaw does operate the SMUD solar projects down at Rancho Seco number 1 and 2. I don't know if you've seen headlines about other projects that they're bringing online, but like I say, this isn't the sole solution to the need. This is one of many, but they need to start. And you don't want to. You're not going to be able to build them all at once. And that's one thing I didn't touch on in my presentation, but as it relates to construction jobs, a lot of times people say, well, yeah, but you're only going to be building for 14 to 16 months. As solar projects continue to build, that workforce moves from project to project and stays in a region for a long time. So that's it's not as though these two projects, the Schoolhouse one and this one, get approved and then SMUD's all set. There's definitely more need out there, and rooftop solar doesn't provide the opportunity at the scale that the utility company needs it at, as well as the rooftop solar is at a much higher cost to the ratepayers than the utility scale solar. Hopefully that helped. I don't have a specific answer to their need versus what percentage this project fills of that need, but yeah.
Jim, I have one more question, if I might.
Please, John.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, both Jims. Could you speak a little bit to the mitigation, how that's going to work? I know it's just from peripheral information that I've received that it's going to be different than the standard norm, and I was just interested in just an overview of how all that's going to work.
Well, the mitigation will be determined out of the environmental impact report in consultation with the state and federal agencies, but we are looking at purchasing mitigation easements to fill much of that obligation. Again, the exact details of that are subject to the environmental process and the comments that we get from those agencies. Was there anything specific that you were asking about?
No, just I understood that it was off-site mitigation, more particularly, I guess, as it relates to both trees and wildlife, hawks and everything.
Yeah. I mean, the project as it relates to trees, we can't plant, obvious reasons, we can't plant trees along the solar array, so we will have to do that off-site. That's, but again, ratios and things like that will come out of the environmental process. And, as Stan mentioned, he's looking to participate in that, from his letter, you heard that. So, I don't know how much more I can add other than that we will work through the environmental process to determine the amount of mitigation required for the project and then fulfill that obligation.
Okay, then just one more final thing, Jim, is that either Jim or both Jims, I'd really be interested as it relates back to the right of way on Scott Road. I don't know through the process how this would work, but I'd like to see what DOT and planning come up with as a result of their negotiation with the applicant before it shows up in a draft EIR. I'd like at least to know that in front, if that's possible. I don't know if that is or not. Maybe somebody can answer my question.
This is Jessica Brandt. I think we could certainly come back with perhaps a report back. We will be bringing we won't be bringing this back until a draft EIR is available. So for a vote.
Yeah, and that's fine.
And just to add on to that, sorry, this is Chris Pahuli, Principal Planner. And just to add on to that, so when we do bring it back for with the draft EIR, that will be the time where the CPAC will be able to review, will be able to offer up their recommendation on the item and perhaps even suggest additional conditions for the project before it goes on to hearing bodies.
Yeah, I understood that, Chris. I was just hoping maybe there could be some, even if it's a verbal update at some future meeting, that we would have some of that in front.
Yeah, I think that would be possible to just do it as part of a staff update prior to it coming. That should be something we should be able to do.
Yeah, that's fine. That's all I'm really asking for. Thanks.
And Chris, this is Jim. Just a quick question for you. And what do you think the time frame is for EIR?
That's a good question. I know that we have some of our environmental staff on the line. I know they've been working on a timeline, so I'm gonna let either Jessica direct traffic on that, or if someone from our environmental team wants to pick that one up.
Looks like we have Allison Little from environmental. Yeah, Allison, do you mind picking that one up?
Sure. I also have our consultant with AECOM, and they really are, they forged the schedule for this. I wish I could give you better, but we're still missing some technical studies that are really necessary to prepare all of the chapters for the EIR. I believe the original schedule had the EIR completed midsummer or so. So pending getting these outstanding technical documents, we're on track. Of course, the NOP is out and it's in the public comment period for about another week and a half or so, I think through the 18th. So we are progressing through our standard procedures.
And just for information, if someone wanted to give a public comment, who would they contact and how?
So they can contact Nate Doberneck, or they can contact myself, or even our general CEQA email address, which is CEQA@saccounty.net. It can come to us in any method. It will find the right staff member.
And it's safe to say everything that we've discussed tonight will be referred to the staff then? Like some of the questions which John brought up, the important ones regarding Scott Road.
Oh, yes, all of those are, yes, we're taking notes on all of that, and we'll be processing that with all of the other NOP comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Fred.
Yeah, Fred.
My comments, first of all, I only got this thing for 5 days. There's no reason we should have to make comments on something with such short amount of time for as much things involved in it. So I don't know if it's possible to request them to come back. We have to do it through the chairman of the board, who I don't know who that is, but as a committee, can we make that request? And the reason being is if you have any kind of job, or you're working, or you're doing anything, to go through the amount of paperwork and all the things that are involved in this, we did not get proper amount of notification. Now, as far as what I can pull off the top of my head, what I'm reading here, as far as the transportation, I don't think they're going to get 84 feet of frontage off the rest of the road other than the Barton Ranch. So arguing about the road is only going to do so good because the county's not on Deer Creek Hills isn't going to cut down all them oak trees to widen the road. And if you look at those oak trees, you'll also notice how successful growing live oaks is out here because all of them are laying down. They're dead. And they're getting worse each year. So if they'll kindly go over there and study their own land, they could maybe get some insight into it. My other question here has to do, well, I'll get mitigation, but first of all, it says here the power annual is only 11,800 houses. They're going to build 15,000 houses in Folsom.
I believe Jim corrected that. Jim, you still?
That was an error in the presentation. The average home utilization, it would power 40,000 homes, 40,000.
Okay, the upper one says 44,800.
Yeah, that's the correct number. I apologize. That was an error in the presentation.
Okay, how much energy does it take to run those two mines? All those big crushers and all that kind of stuff. So that, how much do those two mines take? I don't think whatever they're producing here is going to help much of smut. And I don't think since it's going out the north end of the road, I don't think it's going to help too much on the south end. And so anyway, there needs some clarification there or some input on those two things. Other part was this equivalent carbon sequestered by 400 and some thousand acres of forest annually. Would you explain that, please?
Yeah, so trees sequester carbon as they grow out of the air, and so what they're saying is this versus an alternative production of electricity. The equivalent would be that amount of forest land just growing natively.
So if they need CO2?
They do need CO2, yeah.
So an all-electric life isn't really desirable for trees and grass, would it be?
I'm not sure I follow that, but
I mean, they need what we discharge, and yet we don't want to discharge any. So that whole theory seems a little weird to me. But I need that explained. I hope somebody will take the time and do that. My other question one of them would be the mitigation. I thought mitigation is a county thing, not a federal or a state thing.
The requirements come from CEQA, which the county imposes mitigation measures associated with CEQA. But in addition to that, the state and federal agencies issue permits and authorizations for things like water quality and whatnot. The State Department of Fish and Wildlife, requires mitigation for plains and hawk, and that occurs through the 1602 process. So there's multiple layers of that, but much of it's set out in the environmental document done by the county.
So it's not 1-to-1, 1 acre developed, 1 acre mitigated.
We haven't received the mitigation requirements from the CEQA document, but perhaps somebody from AECOM or the county would like to speak more to that, more directly to that.
Before this, Jim,
go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry, Fred. I didn't mean to interrupt you. With this issue brought up, what role will the HCP or the Habitat Conservation Plan from the county play in the mitigation plan going forward. I know that there's a lot of people, a lot of property owners that are very leery of the HCP and what they've tried to accomplish in the past. And I'm wondering what type of problems the HCP will propose or present going forward with this project and others. Also, a second comment is with regard to John Merchant's easement right-of-way. That whole south area connector was designed to take pressure off of Scott Road, so Scott Road couldn't be, it didn't need to be widened and improved and make a freeway between Jackson Highway, Rancho Marietta, and Folsom. So making it wider, I think, would just encourage more and faster traffic down Scott Road, something that probably not a good idea. Anyway, that's the end of my comments. But the HCP is the primary.
I have a question too on my other comment was, when you do the battery storages, those are all on slabs, right? Concrete slabs, so they are permanent.
They are on concrete slabs, and just like a pool deck, it can be removed and remediated after the project is decommissioned, and it will be required, and bonds will be required to be placed to ensure that that's done. It's part of the decommissioning plan that we will be required to submit to the county for the before the project's built.
So those in the decommissioning, they'll all have to be like mines. They'll have to have a fund or
Correct.
bonds and stuff. That would. What I was trying to get at is this is basically coming out. The people doing this are a bunch of investors from somewhere else other than Sacramento. So if they belly up, who does the cleanup fall to? The owner of the property, the one on the deed?
No, sir. They do require security.
How do you do that?
The county requires security so that if the project owner and operator, I'm sorry?
Somebody else is.
We're getting some feedback when I'm talking. I apologize. I'm not sure where it's coming from. But it is, so anyway, the decommissioning plan will require security. And perhaps if my microphone is echoing, maybe Chris or Jessica from the county could talk a little bit more about that. But it's something that's been required of projects in the past, and we fully anticipate that it'll be required of us.
Yeah, this is Chris Bahuli. Just to confirm what Mr. Gillen's saying, that's absolutely true. There is a part of our zoning code requirements do ensure that there is a guarantee and a bond posted or some security measure so that the decommissioning takes place irrespective of if the entity is still viable.
Another comment I heard from Jim was that because the county has for years been promoting people to do solar on their roofs. Go do this because we'll all become independent. Well, now the PUC is cutting the rebates back to them and making this less attractive. So by building these kind of things, are we basically screwing our own residents? Because I still think, people should do their solar. If they can do it, it should be beneficial, and SMUD should make it as attractive as ever. But to say, well, we can give you more power, you don't need it. Well, they said that with Rancho Seco, and that didn't work out so good. So I'm always skeptical whenever somebody's got our welfare in their mind. So they've been whistling one tune for a long time now. And when the first water heaters and solar came out in the late 70s and 80s, they were a big success. Then the government decided, nope, we don't need that tax incentive anymore for these guys, and it just killed the industry. So what I'm hoping is that this is a contributing factor to the problem and not something that will destroy the individual people trying to help themselves. And I think we need something from SMUD that would assure us that this is not going to happen. That's that question. So you can comment on that if you have insight I don't have.
I can't say that I do. Those are decisions that are happening at the state and I think even maybe the federal level. So I'm not qualified to speculate on that.
Our county board has input on that because SMUD is basically Sacramento County, right? They operate within the county, and PG&E is outside of it.
That is correct.
Yep, it is.
Okay, then the other thing is are there any trees better than those oak trees? Olive trees, anything that provides an edible food other than acorns? Nobody eats acorns.
The reason that the live oaks were selected is because they're a native plant to the area and they're very drought tolerant, or that's how they're purported. I understand what you were saying about the ones along Deer Creek Hills. We can discuss it with our landscape architect, see if there's some alternative that we can propose. But at this point, that was what they were looking at as the best option.
I think they should cite their research like a scientific paper. They do these things can't be mere observations. They have to be where they actually tried to plant some in this area. I know Herb wants to do that by the house, and that's a great idea. But if it doesn't work, give them some options. And if you put a dense shelter belt there, it's going to burn up real good. Whereas if you space the trees out, if we're going to allow this thing to be in our neighborhood, we shouldn't be not wanting to look at it. I don't mind looking at it. I think it's great. Just like the gravel pits. I don't mind looking at those. My kids don't mind looking at them. But to look at a bunch of trees, you get pretty bored. And the spacing is on the trees on the ranches aren't anywhere close to the spacings that you have on your drawings and your pictures. And those trees, most of the trees on that ranch are blue oak anyway, which I think they have a blue oak mitigation area, don't they?
I believe that's the case.
I don't know. That's as much as I got in this short period of time, but I do hope that they would come back prior to going to the EIR and before the board.
Do we have any more questions for Jim? Or for staff?
Member Crowder?
Yes.
Then we did have one public commenter.
Please.
One more comment that I have, it would be on the HCP. I didn't hear staff respond at all with regard to how the HCP would affect this project and others like it.
Hey, Jim, can I ask you something that
Yeah,
goes
please.
along that line? You have knowledge of it. Can they self-mitigate? Because the rest of the ranch isn't going to be in the in the panels, and so if they have grazing around it, why can't they mitigate that land?
If we don't have, oh, now I'm getting the feedback. Alma, do you have the commenter on? If not, I can speak on the HCP. Okay, great.
Sir, if you'd like to start your public comment.
Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Scott Lowridge. My family owns the Scott Ranch just south of the Bartons on Scott Road there. And my first comment is I agree 100% with Fred. This is a hell of a lot of information to try and digest in a short period of time. So I would strongly suggest that that whatever actions need to take place should be postponed so that and come back for another meeting so everybody can get through all the info. But just a couple of comments. We actually, I think in general, we would be in favor of the project. It's a very benign use, and it's certainly better than having subdivisions out there. But I am a little concerned about, they talk about sheep grazing, planting oak trees and whatnot. I would certainly like to see the milestones and conditions of satisfaction that would be, or that should be required of, how long is it going to take these oaks to grow, which we all know is going to be a long time. What do you do in the interim? And then how do you measure that we've achieved that milestone of creating those landscape buffers? And then what do you do when that plan doesn't work? So I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done along those lines. And then the sheep grazing concerns me a little bit. I mean, years ago there was sheep out there, but everybody's gone to cattle, and there's a reason. I went to the Solar Grazing Association website, and what I saw was people feeding sheep out of buckets, and in the background are invasive weeds growing under the solar panels. So I'm a little concerned about there again conditions of satisfaction that who's going to where's the lease for the sheep grazing? I'm sure the operator's not going to own sheep. And what are the conditions of satisfaction that somebody is going to look at for, do we have enough sheep? Are they doing what was promised? What are the milestones to make sure we are achieving the results that we need and that sort of thing? So I do think that there's some additional work that needs to be done along those lines. But in general, I agree with Stan Van Vleck that we would be in favor of the project, given that we have some concerns. We also have some view corridors to the north on our property that I'm a little concerned about the southern end of this project and the solar panel array locations. And so I'd certainly like to see some 3D modeling from the engineer as to, how many yards of dirt are you guys cutting and filling, and what's happening to the topography throughout the ranch, and how is the drainage affected? And I'm sure that's going to all be addressed in the EIR and then whatever the county's drainage study requirements. but I would love to talk to the engineer and see some of their 3D modeling to see how that looks down towards that south end. So those are my comments. But in general, at the moment, we are in favor of the project. So.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Chairperson Crowder, we have one more public comment.
Okay, please.
Okay, sir,
Okay.
please start your public comment.
Hi, Don Rose here. Just a couple quick questions. I think you said during the presentation that the minimum setback to the live oak thicket would be 50 feet to the planting line. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, sir, are you asking a question?
Yes, I'm asking a question. Is the setback to the live oak thicket planting line 50 feet back from Scott Road?
This is Jessica Brandt. There may be some, I think 50 feet would be a minimum setback, and that would be from whatever the right-of-way was.
I'm sorry, I'm asking a question.
I understand that, sir. You had the meeting on in the background. You need to mute the meeting or turn it down so that you can listen to us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on, let me do that. And what's the setback?
This is Jessica Brandt with the county planning. It would be at a minimum 50 feet from the Scott Road right-of-way.
I had another question.
Okay.
What's the minimum setback to the fence line from Scott Road?
So the project is proposing to fence around the areas where they have the actual solar panel arrays. So that's the array itself needs to be 50 feet back. So the fencing would likely follow around that 50 foot as well. There may still be fencing for the property along Scott Road that's already there.
Sir, does that conclude your public comment? Sir?
Well, I don't know. I'm hearing two different things going on here. So, because I'm on the phone and I'm on the presentation, I wanted to know what the setback line was from Scott Road to the fence line.
That's why I said you have to turn the meeting down in the background or off so that you can hear the person responding to your questions. Jessica, can you respond? Could you please repeat your response? I'm sorry.
So the minimum setback for the solar arrays is 50 feet, and that's where they are going to fence. They're going to fence around the individual arrays. However, there is some existing property fencing that is along Scott Road and would likely remain. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that conclude your public comment?
Yes.
Thank you. We do not have any more commenters signed up to speak.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Jim Crowder,
Please.
this is Fred again.
Yeah, Fred.
We haven't discussed fire danger similar to the other solar thing on Dillard.
Yeah, I remember that one.
The sheep situation over there, you go by there now, their fire protection is pretty poor at the least, and that's a small spot. Here, if the sheep can't, because they're only putting them in for a month or two at late spring, if they don't handle the problem, I don't think we should penalize the owner if he has to mow it, or the operator, that he should mow it or something. There should be some sort of a fire protection there, and which is a vague protection, but something within the fenced area should be an alternative, because they're gambling that sheep are going to eat this stuff. And they may not. They may have to bush hog it. They may have to disc it. I don't know, or do some kind of protection in there, because if they don't put sheep in there for 2 years, it's going to be a pretty combustible thing. And I think the county's treatment of grazing land, such as Deer Creek Hills or any of them, needs all to be looked at. If you're in ag res, you've got to have fire lines around your property, and I think these kind of things need to be in the discussion. And I don't know where to take it, but I just think we need some protection. There was a big fire there last year. It was last year, a year before, that went all the way to Folsom. So it wasn't their fault, but it happened on their ranch. So anyway, I don't know how to attack that because we haven't had enough time. But I'm sure Scott probably thinks the same things on his property. And there's other things like if there are potential through this mitigation they have to go through to end up with trails on the eastern border of their property. Do they have to make a commitment on that, or don't they? I think that should probably talk to some of the mitigation stuff, but public trails aren't agriculture and shouldn't be part of the mitigation. That's it for now.
Okay. Well, Jessica, a question for you.
Oh.
The land's still going to be zoned ag, correct?
Yes, that's correct. No change to zoning.
Okay. So that means, would it be safe to say they might have to disc around the perimeter just to maintain some type of fire break? I don't know.
I don't know.
This is Nate from planning. We can look into that. I'm taking notes. We also have on the site plan, you'll note that there are those dirt roads from navigating all of the solar fields, so we can see if that might meet some of those standards. Additionally, the fire department is reviewing this and has provided preliminary comments in its discussion with the applicants regarding fire risks. And then to the previous caller, per the title sheet of the grading plan, it'd be 3.4 million cubic yards of cut and fill for a net zero. Thank you.
Okay. Nate, I do have just a couple questions for you. I was looking at the agricultural management plan that was prepared by DUTEK, and they have under 5.1, they have vegetation monitoring, and 5.2 for grazing. Are both of those only going to be monitored for 2 years, and then they're on their own, or how will that work?
That's a great question. I will turn that over. That would be the purview of our environmental analyst. We have, I believe, Allison Little is still with us. I would ask that maybe she could address that question regarding the DUTEK response on grazing. Allison?
Oh, I wish I had an answer for you right now. Like you, it is a lot of material. We can follow up.
I read that 2 times, and I'm just concerned if you're only gonna wash the car for 2 years, and after that, it's on its own. And that's where we're gonna get into problems. It's exactly what Fred's bringing up. I've seen lightning fires out there, and it's not a pretty sight.
I think what they're talking about in that 2 years is the planting monitoring for the live oaks and the watering and the establishment period. But the county can follow up with that. I I don't think that that's related to the sheep grazing. The sheep grazing is an ongoing activity and would be part of the project management and subject to the county's code enforcement should we fail to continue that practice or fall short on that practice. I also wanted to mention that outside the fence line of the project, adjacent to Scott Road, will be unprotected in terms of the sheep, so we would have to employ some other methodology of weed abatement because you're not gonna want sheep running down by the road where you don't have a fence around them. So we can talk about that with county planning and on how that would be achieved.
So they're not grazing cattle around the outside of the project?
We are. I'm just not sure if they'll keep them in between the road and the panels that are closest to the road. I'm not sure how that would work. It's something that, like I say, we can continue to talk to county planning about.
So Fred brought up a good point. Can we have some feedback from the county, from planning or whoever needs to on some of these items, put it in the staff update later on?
Yeah, this is Nate from planning. I will be following Chris Bahuli's direction on that. I will remind all folks that we have ample documents available on our planning project viewer. And if any of these documents referenced tonight aren't on there, we'll make sure that those are available. But that requires you to look through them all. And so we'll try to get answers for all of your questions tonight. We are all taking notes. Thanks.
Okay. And this is just an informational and comment more than anything else right now, correct?
Absolutely.
Anyone else have any comments, any questions?
If there are no further questions, I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to present and also answer questions for you, and look forward to seeing you again, either on Slough House or on this one as the project moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right, Mr. Clerk, since we're not going to vote on this at all, we're just going to move on from here. What's next on the schedule? Item number 3.
Okay. Item 3 is information relating to Senate Bill 9, SB 9 requirements to allow 2 primary dwellings on 1 parcel, to provide for ministerial processing of 2-lot tentative parcel maps, and to address expirations of tentative map approvals.
All right, CPAC members, this is Chris Bahuli. Again, I'm going to be doing this presentation for you. There is a PowerPoint, only a handful of slides, and due to the late hour, I will try to accelerate the presentation a bit and get to your questions as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of the recently enacted state law Senate Bill 9, SB 9, which is also sort of colloquially known as the duplex bill. In September of last year, Governor Newsom signed SB 9, which has 3 main components, and became effective on January 1. The first component is it allows by right development of 2 homes or primary dwellings on a single lot within single-family residential zones. Second is that property owners can split 1 lot into 2 lots by right ministerially. And third, that tentative maps can now be approved for a 4-year period rather than a 3-year period. I should also note that property owners can do both splitting 1 lot into 2 and placing the 2 homes on both of those creative
lots. All of these provisions in SB 9 are exempt from CEQA. They have certain requirements that must be met. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, they became effective on January 1. In December of last year, the Board of Supervisors did introduce county code amendments and adopted them to, again, the county code. They also updated the zoning code's user guide to begin processing request under SB 9. And at that hearing, the board directed staff to go out and meet with all of the CPACs, including some neighborhood associations and the Planning Commission, to discuss these new state laws. And that's why I'm here before you this evening. And we've been at most of the other CPACs. I think there might only be a handful left. So next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how SB 9 works. The first thing to note is that in order to take advantage of SB 9, there is a two-part test that must be met. The first is that a property must be located in an urbanized area or urban cluster. So you can see the Cosumnes area to the right of the map, and there is not much area in Cosumnes that is actually in that urbanized area or urban cluster, with the exception of Rancho Murrieta. And so most of this bill and these provisions do not apply to the Cosumnes community. So that is the first test, is that it needs to be in an urbanized area. The second is that the property must be zoned for single-family residential use. And for the county's purposes, what we have done is defined that as RD1 through RD10. Additionally, there are some properties that would be located in special planning areas or neighborhood preservation areas that may have a single-family residential underlying zone, and those would also be eligible under SB 9. Next slide, please. So in addition to the locational and zoning test, there are some other key provisions of the law that I want to mention. I stated earlier that the provisions of SB 9 are statutorily exempt from CEQA, as these are ministerial requests. These requests can be denied. However, they can only be denied if the building official finds that there are health and safety reasons for that denial. So it is going to be a very high bar. Basically, if the upshot would be that if projects or requests do meet the SB 9 requirements, it's very likely that they would move through approval. There are some limited conditions that can be applied to projects, but those are going to be pretty much limited to easements, with no off-site improvements or dedications required. We will be able to impose some parking requirements. However, if a site is located in a location that's next to public transit, those parking requirements will not be able to be imposed. We are able to, under the law, condition that properties created under SB 9 not be used for short-term vacation rentals, and we do intend to place those conditions on requests. These laws do also drastically change the required development standards that we have codified in our zoning code. So, for example, we cannot require side or rear yard setbacks of more than 4 feet. For parcel splits, the minimum lot size can be as small as 1,200 square feet. However, I should note that with a lot split, each lot has to be roughly the same size. So you can't end up with one lot being 1,200 square feet and the other lot being an acre. They have to be roughly proportional in size. And then finally, I also wanted to note that one key provision of the law is that for lot splits, the owner that's requesting the lot split must sign an affidavit indicating that they will live in one of those properties for a minimum of 3 years. Next slide, please.
So I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to process these lot splits. This is specific to lot splits, however, and not the 2 homes on one lot. For those requests, they will move straight through a building permit process with no additional planning review or conditioning or limited conditioning. So staff has developed applications for SB9, also frequently asked questions and fact sheets. Those are all on our website. We are able to begin taking applications for SB9 lot splits. We are charging the same fee that we charge for other parcel maps. So we are basically going to be processing very similar to how we handle other parcel map requests, tentative parcel map requests. They are going to be subject to review by county departments and agencies, similar to parcel maps. Based on the board direction, surrounding property owners living within 500 feet of a request will be notified for applications that have been filed. Additionally, we will also notify CPACs. So we will provide a courtesy notice to CPACs. It's not expected that there will be a presentation. There would be no action requested of the CPAC. However, the board felt it important to notify CPAC members so that you all knew what was going on in the community in case your neighbors may ask about filed applications. Finally, the planning director will be the decision body for these SB9 parcel map requests as they are ministerial rather than the subdivision review committee. Appeals of the planning director's decision would be to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is the Planning Commission, and they would be very limited and likely the only entity with any standing to appeal a decision would be the applicant themselves. Next slide, please. So regarding the request to build 2 homes on one lot, the county is initially intending to use our accessory dwelling unit development standards as they generally seem to track with the law. I should state that we are waiting for state guidance, which could change this approach. This is due to the state law not specifically stating a maximum size for the second home on the property, but the law states that the minimum size has to be at least 800 square feet. So therefore, we're going to move forward with a more conservative approach initially, which will be to cap the maximum size of that second home to our ADU development standards. So up to 1,000 square feet would be allowed by right. If an applicant wants to go up to 1,200 square feet, they can apply for a discretionary permit, but they could not go any larger than 1,200 square feet with that second home. So again, we may learn in the next coming weeks and months that that approach is not consistent with the state's direction. And if that is the case, then we will pivot on that direction and ensure that we are compliant with the state's direction. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, as I mentioned, we are meeting with all of the CPACs, and we will be also meeting with the Planning Commission to provide this information, make sure everyone knows how the law will be, or how these new laws will be implemented within the county. As I stated earlier, we are expecting some guidance at some point from the state in terms of how to implement these new provisions, and we may learn that we have to pivot a bit in terms of how we are currently proceeding with implementation. And to the extent that there is some changes, we may incorporate those into a zoning code package and notify CPACs about those changes. Ultimately, those changes would need to go to the Planning Commission and board. So lastly, just wanted to just say or reiterate that all the information on SB9 is on our website, and we do have a very detailed fact sheet that's about 6 or 7 pages long on our website that provides quite a bit of information. So if you know of anyone that might be interested, I would push them towards our website with a lot of good information. So that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Don, Chris, this is Fred Hagee. Would you define urbanized area?
Sure. Yeah. If you go back to, if I can have the clerk's office go back to, I believe it was slide 3. So the U.S. Census Bureau is who defines the urbanized area or urban cluster. I suspect it has something to do, I don't know exactly what the definition is, but I suspect that it has something to do with population density. And this map that is on your slide right now, it is also on our website. This area in green crosshatch is what the U.S. Census Bureau defines as an urbanized area or urban cluster.
So it has nothing to do with sewer, or public water?
I do not believe that it does, no.
So there's areas in our zone that has 2-acre people, and they should not have these same rights as 2-acre parcels in Fair Oaks or Orangevale or Folsom or Vineyard or any of those, Elk Grove. So I don't know, this thing seems weird. To add an extra house in a situation with intense traffic, and yet not let people who could use an extra house for their kids or whatever have one. I think that gives too much power to planning director.
Well, if in terms of power to the planning director, these will be processed ministerially. And so, as I mentioned, the ministerial process is really sort of a checklist process. So there isn't any discretion that really will be imposed by the planning director. So as I mentioned earlier, the intent here is that as long as they comply with all of the requirements, then their map would be approved.
Thank you.
Jim, it's John. I just have one comment.
Yeah, John.
Chris, then I just want to make sure going forward I understand. We have, for example, 800 units that there's an application at the county for that will be developed at some point in time. There are 400 of those that are larger lots, 12,000 to 20,000 square feet. Ultimately, we have to put in water, sewer, and drainage and do water supply assessments to make sure that we have enough water to service these initial developments, which is stuff we're used to and we've done for years. Is it now, for example, being left to the Rancho Murrieta CSD to decide what level we should be designing our infrastructure to? I mean, this is kind of an unknown. Generally, we would design to a development or a proposed development, and it would get approved, and we would build infrastructure to accommodate it. But it's quite possible, I don't know if quite possible is correct, but it is possible that the amount of homes on that initially approved development will be double what it was when it was submitted on the application to the county. So is it left to us to decide what level we want to require that infrastructure to be built to? What I'm saying is, if I'm designing for 400 houses with this potential, do I initially build water, sewer, and drainage to accommodate 600 or 650? Because these could come along not in the general course of development. These could come along under this new SB9. They could come along 5, 10, or 15 years later. Yep. Which would cause, at some point, would begin to cause major infrastructure redesign. But I just want to understand that as we do this, is it now up to us to do our own forecasting as to how many houses will wind up in these proposed developments?
So I think that this is probably a discussion that we, and when I say we, I mean county and CSD staff should have. There's a couple of unique aspects of SB9, at least my understanding of SB9. And again, as I mentioned, things could change as we learn more from the state. But one is that that SB9 does supersede any local government requirements, restrictions, standards, etc. However, my understanding is that it does not supersede any private covenants, conditions, or requirements that are placed on properties. So there could be a way of approaching future development in Rancho Murrieta to perhaps maybe prohibit additional lot splits and other components of this law. So that's one thing just to note. And then, as I mentioned, there is the ability for the building official to deny certain requests if there are public health and safety reasons for doing that. We've had conversations with county departments about potentially requests that have impacts on sewer or septic or water, where there may be a strong rationale for denying a request. So I don't have a good answer for you tonight, John, on that. But I do think that there's some further discussions that need to happen between county staff and CSD as it relates to Rancho Murrieta.
Right. Okay. Good. Thanks, Chris.
Chairperson Crowder, this is Manuel with the Clerk of the Board's office.
Yes.
I just wanted to inform you that we don't have public comment for this item, but we did have a late caller for the last item, item number 2. They're stating that because of bad cell service, they were not able to call in on time, and it is at your discretion if you would like to take the comment.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and take the comment.
We just got to give the caller a call back, and then we'll put them on the line. Give me one moment.
Okay.
Go ahead and start your public comment.
Yes, this is Pamela Payan, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, this is Pamela Payan, a property owner on Scott Road adjacent to the proposed project. I'm north of the project. My house sits at 500 feet above this project, looking right into the proposed area off of would be south of the Boys Ranch. And I'm concerned about, has anybody has any information on the visual pollution from these solar panels? Glare or anything like that?
Nate, are you still on call?
Hello, this is Nate from planning. I didn't hear that. Was that for me or someone else?
Yeah, we have a question about visual pollution, glare from the solar panels.
Yes, thank you. This is Nate with the Sacramento County Planning Department. For the caller, an outside consultant company named Dudek did prepare a glare analysis They do look at various visuals. I think they went to, I think it was like a 2-mile radius. It is far enough away from the airport. It's my understanding that for pilots, it's not an issue for the Mather Field, private or cargo planes. But there are key vantage points that were modeled to look at the glare analysis. My understanding also that solar panels absorb most of the light and are low reflectivity, so they might be different than typical glass windows. I could make that analysis available to the caller. We can absolutely get that to her. The clerk perhaps wants to capture that information. They will be visible from various vantage points, though there is no way of getting around that with elevation change.
Yes, well, I'm at 500 feet above this project off of Scott Road. This is the Payan Ranch, and we're a beef cattle operation, and we've been here since 1852. And my home sits at 500 feet above this proposed project and would look right down into this project.
Does that conclude your public comment, Ms. Pan?
No, I did agree with Mr. Hagee on that. I just was notified today of this meeting. I was apparently sent the information, but I had someone call me about the meeting tonight, which I'm glad they did. But this is a lot of information that needs to be absorbed and looked at. I'd like to see that we can maybe have another meeting on this, and so we can go over all this information. I know I have not against the project, say so, but there is a lot of things that really do need to be looked at. I have a real big issue with the safety of this road, putting more traffic with the condition that the road we have out here on Scott Road. That's another whole issue too. So I'm going to have an array of things that I'm going to be bringing forth to the county on my concerns for my infrastructure for this, dealing with this project going in myself. So thank you for letting me come in late and comment.
You're welcome. Nate, is there a way we can get her lined up so she can be an attendee for the scoping meeting this next Wednesday?
I could be at that meeting.
Yeah, you're reading my mind. That's exactly what I was going to reference again. That scoping meeting will be a week from today, and these are exactly the sort of public feedback that would be extraordinarily useful to capturing all the public sentiment that goes into what comprises the environmental impact report.
Will that be a meeting that we go to, or would it be like we're doing the Zoom?
That is a great question. It will be a Zoom meeting. It will be virtual and streamed. We're happy to take comments before, during the meeting, but these are all ways. If the clerk is on the line, is there a protocol for reaching out to callers after the meeting to direct information? I'm unsure what the procedure is.
From the clerk's office, I will take down Ms. Pan's contact information and I will email it to you.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Just lastly, we did do noticing for this project. We did do that, radius map. We put 2 public notice signs on site, and it was on the project viewer. So we're absolutely trying our best to get as much public feedback as we can through those 3 methods. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Pan.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to be a part of the next meeting and definitely have a lot of concerns, and I do, have concerns all the way from putting sheep in there, which they used to be here years ago, and they've left for a reason. They're not in here, and I have historical data on why they were taken out of here. And one of the reasons you can see over on the Dillard Road side, over where Fred was talking about, that hasn't worked out very well, and we have big fire dangers. That's another big issue that needs to be addressed, and a backup system for that if the sheep fail in there, which they did it. They have failed somewhat over at Dillard. There's a lot of weeds coming up, and I know they're feeding them and different things. So I want to be a part of the next meeting. So thank you very much for letting me come in and make my comment.
You're welcome.
Jim, John.
Yes, John.
Just this really, and the NOP wasn't. This really needs to get in the River Valley Times so that the local community is really exposed to this next meeting.
I was thinking the same thing, and I saw Gail's online.
Yeah, we need this published. I mean, that's where it belongs. This whole region relies on that newspaper for that information.
Yep. To everyone out there, do we have any more questions for Chris on item 3? Or are we done with that? Okay, seeing no questions, Mr. Clerk, now we have item number 4, officer elections.
Yes, reading to the record, item 4, officer election.
All right, John, how do we want to do this, or Fred? Any suggestions?
Well, let's see. We could nominate Dan Reed to be chairman. He could, he's earned the title. Being vice chair, he could probably handle being chair. So I nominate Dan Reed.
I'll second that.
So this is where we usually ask Dan or anybody else if they want it.
Dan's pretty quiet.
Dan asleep. Didn't hear a response.
I haven't heard a response.
Which member are we speaking about? Member Perrin?
Member Reed?
Oh, Member Reed. Oh, yeah, I know. Hold on a moment. Member Reed? He's not responding. He may need to, oh.
I think we got him back on.
Looks like he's trying to speak. His little microphone is lighting up, but we don't hear anything.
Kind of hard to move forward without getting some input from Mr. Reed.
Maybe we should postpone it for a month.
You can do that. You could postpone it to the next time you meet. I don't know if it'll be next month, but we can postpone it till the next meeting.
Anyone have any objections to doing that?
Nope.
All right. Do we need to, or can we just say we're going to postpone it? We don't have to vote on it or anything else, correct?
No, Chairperson Crowder, you will need to vote on continuing it to the next meeting.
Okay. Then we'll need a motion. We'll need a motion to carry it over for 1 month.
I'll move we do that, Jim.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. And have a roll call, please.
All right, so we have a motion from Member Merchant and a second from Member Higgy to postpone. So let me go ahead and do the votes. Chairperson Crowder?
Yes.
Member Nguyen? Member Nguyen? Member Nguyen, if you're speaking, it looks like you're muted.
I thought I should. What? Hello?
Your vote. Hi, Member Nguyen, we're looking to vote to postpone the officer elections.
Notice you can't hear me. Hello?
Hi, Member Nguyen, we can hear you now.
This is bullshit. I'm sorry, you can't hear me? I'll hang up.
We can hear you.
Member Wynn, this is Alma from the clerk's office. We can hear you, sir.
Oh, well, I had said yes 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
I'll yell it, yes!
All right. Let's see. I'll try again. Member Reed?
Yes.
Looks like Member Perham has dropped off the call. Member Merchant?
Yes.
Member Hunter?
Yes.
And then Member Higgy?
Yes.
All right. So the motion carries 6 ayes and 1 no vote.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, do we have a staff update?
So item
This
number
is-
5 is,
Oh, I was just going to say, this is Chris Pahuli. We did not have a staff update this evening.
okay. Item number 5 was staff update, and item number 6 is council member comments.
Any comments, anyone? All right. And public comments, we've had all those, correct?
I do not have any public comments, so item number 7 is public comments, and we do not have any additional public comment.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
To terminate meeting.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion to adjourn from Member Crowder, second by Member Higgy. To vote, let's start. Chairperson Crowder?
Yes.
Chairperson Wynn?
Yes.
Chairperson Reed? Looks like he dropped off the call. Let's go with Chairperson Merchant?
Yes.
Chairperson Hunter?
Yes.
Chairperson Higgy?
Yes.
All right. Motion carries 5 votes and 2 non-votes. Meeting adjourned.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Crowder.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred.
Talk to you.
All right.
Bye, Jim. Bye, Fred.
Okay, guys, take care. Bob?
Thank you, council members. Goodbye.
See you guys later.
Okay.